You know those nightmares where you're trapped in a speeding car and you suddenly realize, no one is driving?
Oh, yeah. The absolute worst.
Right, the panic just builds in your chest and you slam your foot on the brake pedal, but it's just mush.
Yeah, there's no friction at all.
Exactly. You are completely bracing for the inevitable, devastating crash. And then right before impact, the radio just clicks on and starts blasting like a ridiculous upbeat polka song.
Right. It's that classic loss of control anxiety dream.
Totally.
But it's weaponized by complete and utter emotional whiplash.
Yeah.
I mean, you are terrified, right? You're stripped of your agency. But simultaneously, you're just deeply confused by the sheer absurdity of the moment.
And that emotional whiplash, that terrifying absurdity, is exactly what millions of fans experienced on May 3rd, 2026.
Yeah, it really was.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in the intense, chaotic, and frankly, just mind-bending fan reactions to Season 3, Episode 4 of Euphoria, titled Kitty Likes to Dance.
Such a wild title, too.
Oh, for sure. Now, we aren't just going to give you a beat-by-beat summary of the plot today. If you are listening to this, you already know the stakes. You already know what happened.
Right. Our approach here is, it's a bit different. We are treating the massive Reddit discussion thread that just erupted right after the episode aired as a real-time psychological seismograph.
I love that phrase.
Thanks.
We
We really want to read between the lines here. We want to track the exact moments the audience's anxiety peaked, you know?
Yeah, and where their suspension of disbelief was aggressively tested.
Exactly. And also how they utilize collective humor to process some genuinely, deeply dark thematic material.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because sitting down with the source material for this deep dive, it felt like holding a live wire.
I mean, the thread was moving so fast.
It was. The sheer chaos of what the fans caught, what they memed, and what genuinely horrified them, it gives us this perfect map to the true underlying mechanics of this incredibly tense hour of television.
It really does.
And I want to start with the most anxiety-inducing element of the entire episode. I mean, Rue is walking a legal and literal tightrope as a DEA informant, and the community was practically screaming at their screens.
Oh, the stress was palpable.
Yeah, user Peasy summed up the collective frustration perfectly. They wrote, "Me in the first 2 minutes. Rue, where is your lawyer? Why are you answering questions without a lawyer, Brew?"
It is such a visceral reaction. But it speaks to a very specific mechanic the writers are employing here.
Right.
We are watching a deeply vulnerable character,
Yeah.
someone with a history of severe addiction, trauma, unreliability.
Yeah, she's so fragile right now.
Exactly. And she's navigating this high-stakes interrogation without any legal representation. The audience implicitly understands that the legal system is designed to extract information, not to protect the informant.
But I want to push back a little on the idea that this is just like standard procedural tension, because it gets infinitely worse with the bugged phone situation.
Oh, the phone, yeah.
Rue is given this phone, and she gets a call from Mom. And user Neticy2392 brought up a hypothetical scenario that honestly made my stomach drop.
What did they say?
They asked, what if Rue was forced to put her phone on speaker when her mom called?
Oh, wow.
Right. Just imagine the physical geography of that scene for a second. She's sitting there with someone highly dangerous, potentially Lori, which, by the way, some fans in the thread spell Lori.
Right. There's always a debate on the spelling.
Yeah. But she's with someone terrifying, and she has to answer that call on speakerphone.
That transforms an already dangerous situation into a classic Hitchcockian bomb-under-the-table scenario.
Ooh, yes.
But, with a modern digital twist. In Hitchcock's theory of suspense, you show the audience the bomb, but the characters don't know it's there.
Right. They're just playing cards or whatever.
Exactly. Here, we know the phone is a trap. Rue knows it's a trap, but the predators she's sitting with don't. The tension comes from anticipating the exact second that bomb goes off.
But here's what drove the fans absolutely up the wall, and frankly, what confused me too. The people running the trap, the quote-unquote good guys, they are completely incompetent.
Shockingly so.
User Hourly Pump 99 pointed out the mind-boggling absurdity of the DEA agent on the other end of that phone.
Oh, the deep voice.
Yes, the agent goes straight to business in this booming, deep male voice. They don't use a female agent. They don't even attempt a convincing mom voice. They just barge into the audio space.
It's so jarring.
It is. I kept thinking about it like a horribly planned high school play where the stakes are somehow life or death. The lead actor forgets their lines, and the tech guy is just shining the spotlight directly into the audience's eyes.
That's a great analogy.
It's almost comical. Are the writers just getting lazy? Are they sacrificing logic just to make us sweat?
I mean, it is very easy to write this off as lazy plotting or cheap suspense,
Right.
but I argue it's a deeply deliberate thematic choice.
Really? How so?
Look at the audio design of that specific moment. You have the suffocating ambient silence of the room Rue is in.
Yeah, it's so quiet.
Right. Every floorboard creak, every breath is magnified. And then, shattering that delicate acoustic environment, you have the harsh digital compression of this booming male voice.
It feels like an invasion.
It is. By making the DEA so inept, the show systematically removes the audience's safety net.
So it's not just a mistake, it's an intentional removal of rescue.
Exactly. In a traditional police procedural, the institution of law enforcement represents order. Even if the protagonist goes undercover and gets into deep trouble, the audience finds comfort in knowing the cavalry is standing by.
Right. There's always a van down the street with guys in headsets.
Precisely. Euphoria strips that comfort away completely. It isolates Rue entirely.
Wow.
It tells the audience and Rue that the institutions you rely on to save you are flawed, careless, and fundamentally incapable of understanding the nuanced psychology of the underworld they're trying to police.
It's an inverted rescue. The rescue team is actually the most dangerous variable in the room.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I want you, listening right now, to really put yourself in that pressure cooker. You are in a room with individuals who would not hesitate to kill you if they suspected you were wearing a wire.
It's terrifying.
You are waiting for a subtle, coded lifeline. The phone rings. The caller ID says, "Mom." You answer it, praying for a gentle, feminine check-in, and instead you get a deeply suspicious, booming male voice barking operational details.
Just zero situational awareness from the agent.
Zero. You have to do the heavy lifting of the deception for the very people who are supposed to be managing you.
And the psychological toll of that is immense. It totally inverts the power dynamic.
How so?
Well, Rue is a teenager. She's an addict. And yet she has to be the most competent person in the operation just to stay alive.
That is so messed up.
It is. The DEA's incompetence forces the audience to realize that survival isn't going to come from the outside. If Rue survives, it will be solely through her own desperate improvisation.
Which perfectly transitions us to the environment where survival requires the darkest kind of improvisation. The club?
Oh boy. The club scenes.
Yeah. So we are introduced to a new stripper named Kitty. And immediately the audience is hit with this bizarre visual trick.
The casting choice here was brilliant.
It was so weird. User PepperBet1 noted they were completely stunned because Kitty looked so much like the actress Grace Van Patten. But then they realized she is actually played by Grace's real-life sister, Anna.
It is a brilliant, disorienting casting choice. It induces a profound sense of the uncanny valley.
Because she looks familiar, but not quite right.
Exactly. You're looking at a face that is deeply familiar to you, but the micro-expressions, the bone structure, something is just slightly off. It makes the viewer fundamentally distrust their own eyes.
And questioning reality is exactly what the writers want us to do in this setting, right? Because the deeper you look, the more horrifying the background details become.
Absolutely. The background is where the real horror is.
Speaking of horrifying details, user Yermindex cracked a naming code that absolutely blew my mind. They pointed out that the strip club workers are all named after X-Men.
This was such a huge revelation in the thread.
Think about the roster we have seen. We have Bishop, we have Magic, specifically spelled with a K, we have Angel, and now we have Kitty.
Right.
The user explicitly said 3 could be a coincidence, but Bishop, Magic, Angel, and now Kitty, it has to be intentional.
It is undeniably intentional, and when you actually dig into the specific lore of those comic book characters, the implications for these women are just devastating.
Let's do that, because at first glance, giving sex workers superhero names sounds like a clumsy attempt at empowerment.
Yeah, like girlbots feminism.
Exactly. But the reality of this club is the furthest thing from empowering. User Tay Clayton's pointed out a grim realization that washed over the fan base during this episode.
About Angel, right?
Yes. The audience had previously assumed Angel was trafficked after she went to rehab. But the timeline revealed in this episode makes it devastatingly clear she was already being trafficked at the club.
It completely shifts our understanding of her past.
It does. And user Pumpernick3 Doll described a group scene featuring a prostitute or stripper with a group of men as terribly disturbing and sad.
It was a really tough scene to watch.
So I have to ask you, are these X-Men names just an ironic, cruel joke by the writers? Or is there a functional, psychological reason these specific names are being used in this horrific environment?
If we look at the specific mutant powers of the X-Men referenced, it becomes a profound, agonizing commentary on dissociation and survival.
Okay, break that down for me.
So in the X-Men mythos, mutants develop extraordinary abilities during puberty or moments of extreme stress to protect themselves from a world that hates and exploits them.
Right, it's a trauma response.
Exactly. Now, apply that to the women in this club. Let's look at Kitty Pryde from the comics. What is her power?
Intangibility, right? She can phase through solid matter.
Yes, she can make it so nothing can touch her. For a woman being exploited and physically violated in a club, the ultimate psychological survival mechanism is to phase out of your own body.
Oh, man.
To become intangible, you dissociate so that the hands touching you aren't really touching you.
Oh, my God. That is incredibly dark.
It gets darker.
What about magic? Spelled with a K.
So, in the comic lore, Illyana Rasputin, who goes by Magic, is kidnapped as a child and taken to a demonic hell dimension called Limbo.
Wait, really?
Yes, she is forced to age up there, surrounded by demons, and has to learn dark sorcery just to survive the horrific abuse of that realm. When she returns to the real world, her soul is permanently corrupted by what she had to do to survive.
That is a direct one-to-one parallel with the reality of underage trafficking that the show is exposing here.
It's chillingly precise.
These women are pulled into a hell dimension, which is the club, where they are forced to grow up instantly and adopt these dark, hardened personas just to endure it.
Right.
Their superpower is the ability to detach, to endure the unendurable, to put on an alter ego so that their true selves remain hidden. Kitty, Angel, Magic, those aren't just names, they're psychological armor.
Precisely. And from a narrative mechanics standpoint, the show uses this lore, combined with the background details of Angel's timeline, to force the audience to confront their own complicity.
What do you mean by complicity?
We watched previous episodes making naive assumptions about Angel's timeline. We assumed she was safe until rehab, but this episode forces us to realize the horror was happening right in front of us in the background of the club scenes the entire time.
We just weren't paying attention.
We just weren't looking closely enough.
Yeah.
We missed the signs.
We were distracted by the neon lights and the music, just like the patrons of the club.
Exactly.
It completely pulls the rug out from under us. And, well, speaking of characters who pull the rug out, we have to talk about Bishop.
Oh, Bishop. The enigma.
The audience is in a state of profound, agonizing confusion about whose side Bishop is actually on. User Calicatoon flat out asked the thread, is Bishop an undercover cop or an informant like Rue?
It's the biggest question of the season right now.
I mean, I watched the episode twice, and I literally cannot tell if he is a high-level cartel operator or a deeply embedded law enforcement agent.
The ambiguity surrounding Bishop is arguably the most sophisticated tension-building tool the show has deployed this season. The writers are intentionally denying the audience the ability to categorize him.
It's so frustrating now.
It is, because we desperately want to put him in the good guy box or the bad guy box. Categorization provides emotional safety. If we know what he is, we know how to feel about him.
But we don't know how to feel because we see these microscopic flashes of what looks like genuine care.
Yes, the interrogation scene.
Exactly. User Starlit Lagoon noted a highly specific detail during that terrifying interrogation scene. Rue is choking up, she is clearly spiraling into a panic attack, and Bishop steps in.
It's such a subtle moment.
He looks at her and asks, "Are you gonna call?" Fans interpreted this as him stepping in to save her. It felt like he knew her secret, he knew the phone was bugged, he knew about the trap, and was actively giving her a lifeline before she broke character entirely.
It is a micro-interaction. It's barely a few seconds of screen time.
Yeah.
But in a world completely devoid of trust, it shines incredibly bright.
It really does.
The question is it the light of a lighthouse? Or is it the lure of an anglerfish?
That is a terrifying thought, because the hunger for context is just overwhelming. Another user, Unusual Airy 579, was practically begging for clarity.
What were they saying?
They were saying they would kill for a Bishop backstory episode. They miss when the show used to start episodes with a deep dive into a character's past.
Your cold opens, yeah.
Right. Why do you think the writers are stubbornly withholding his backstory? What is the mechanical purpose of keeping us in the dark like this?
It functions as an empathy engine.
An empathy engine, I like that.
By refusing to give us Bishop's backstory, the show forces us to experience Rue's paranoia in real time.
Oh, because we don't know any more than she does.
Exactly. If we, the audience, with our omniscient viewer perspective, cannot deduce who is safe, then we feel the exact, suffocating psychological state that Rue is trapped in.
That makes perfect sense.
We don't get a backstory because Rue doesn't get a backstory. She just has to look at the man in front of her and gamble her life on whether his eye contact means empathy or execution.
Wow. It makes hope the most dangerous emotion in the entire show. We want to trust that moment when he stops her from choking up. Rue desperately needs to trust it.
But trusting it could kill her.
Exactly. The architecture of this universe tells us that trusting the wrong person is fatal. It makes me wonder if the moral decay is so absolute that survival tactics look identical on both sides of the law.
That is the tragedy of the environment. And this environment doesn't just corrupt the present, it actively colonizes the future.
Oh, that's a chilling way to put it. Which brings us to the visual and narrative echoes happening in this episode.
The parallels.
Yes, the show heavily relied on visual parallels to show characters trapped in repeating cycles. User Pedalita noticed a heartbreaking callback.
The photography scene.
Yes. There is a moment where Lexi is watching Cassie take pictures. It perfectly, devastatingly mirrors a scene from season 1 when Lexi watched Cassie take pictures for McKay.
The physical positioning of the characters in the frame is identical. The observer and the observed.
The caretaker and the spiraler.
Exactly. Years have passed in the narrative, but psychologically they haven't moved an inch.
It's like watching a genetic algorithm run over and over again. You know, in computer science, a genetic algorithm runs a simulation, tests for the most efficient outcome, and then runs it again slightly mutated.
Right.
It feels like the environment of this town is running a trauma algorithm. It optimizes for exploitation. And it gets even more literal, which user Prince Vince Alum 13 pointed out.
The kids in the background?
Yeah. They highlighted the appearance of 2 young girls running around the background who look exactly like Cassie and Maddie Minimus. The user called it a fun touch.
Calling that a fun touch is certainly the most optimistic reading of a deeply cynical visual metaphor.
Right. I read that comment and thought, there is nothing fun about this. To me, casting literal children to act as visual stand-ins for Cassie and Maddie isn't an Easter egg. It's a prophecy.
It absolutely is.
What is the show actually saying by putting these mini-mess in the frame?
It is a visual thesis statement on cyclical trauma. The show uses these parallels to demonstrate a painful truth without massive, intentional intervention. Trauma freezes you in time.
You just get stuck.
You play the exact same role, just with different props. Lexi is still trapped behind the lens, passively watching her sister perform for the male gaze, unable to intervene. Cassie is still desperately seeking validation through performance.
And the young girls?
Those young girls running around. They are a haunting representation of how the next generation is already stepping into the exact same toxic footprints.
Like the mold is already made.
Exactly. The mold has been prepared by the environment. These girls are just the fresh clay.
It implies a terrifying lack of free will. It suggests that the tragedy isn't individual, it's systemic. And if it's systemic, someone has to be building the system.
The architects of the chaos.
Let's look at the expanding criminal network, specifically focusing on Faye, Lori, and Roselia. We find out the cops snitched on Roselia, which delighted user Throw the Whole Gory.
That username is amazing.
It really is. And we got an instantly iconic, campy line from the confrontation. Miss Fake Neck Brace is calling Emmy a liar.
It is remarkable how the writers can inject these moments of high camp and soap opera melodrama into the middle of a grim cartel storyline.
It really is, but beneath that campy dialogue, fans are having a very serious debate about the nature of agency, specifically regarding the character of Faye.
The Faye debate is fascinating.
Is she a mastermind or is she a victim? User Hourly Pump 99 pointed out a specific robbery, arguing that Faye has absolutely no long-term plan.
Right, they see her as purely impulsive.
Yeah, they essentially claim she just hooked up with the guy on pure impulse just to rob him. But user Fuck pushed back hard on that theory in the thread.
What was their counter-argument?
They argued that Faye isn't calculating at all. They think she is deeply lost, easily influenced, and desperately needs stability, a job, and a place to stay.
That's a very different read on the character.
It is. So I want to debate this with you. When you look at Faye's actions, is she a willing, strategic participant in Lori's gang, or is she just debris floating in a hurricane?
To understand Faye, we have to contrast her with the architect of the hurricane, Lori.
Okay, contrast them for me.
Lori represents pure strategy. She is highly connected, utterly ruthless, and plays a sociopathic long game based on debt, leverage, and addiction.
She operates the ecosystem.
She sees the big picture.
Exactly. Faye, conversely, represents unadulterated survival instinct. I tend to agree with the interpretation that Faye lacks a grand plan because her horizon is incredibly short.
What do you mean her horizon is short?
When you are at the absolute bottom of the ecosystem of addiction, you do not think in terms of months or years. You think in terms of hours.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Where is the next fix? Where's the next meal? Where is a door I can lock so I can sleep? Faye's actions, like the robbery, are purely transactional and immediate.
So there's no grand scheme, it's just getting to the next day.
Right. The tragedy of Faye is that her desperate search for shelter constantly leads her to the very people who guarantee her destruction. She is easily influenced because, to someone who's entirely unmoored, influence looks like direction.
Influence looks like direction.
And any direction feels like progress.
That is devastating, and it perfectly explains why Laurie is so successful at trapping people.
Yeah.
But what fascinates me is how the audience reacts to this chaos.
We project our own desires onto the show.
Yes, we, the viewers, are desperately looking for direction too. We
That's-
want to find order in this sprawling, chaotic narrative. Let's look at Cassie's storyline.
The cocaine scene.
There was immense tension when Cassie snorted cocaine in this episode. Fans expected the product to be fentanyl-laced, specifically supplied by Laurie.
The anxiety in the thread was through the roof.
It was. They wanted it to connect all the separate character storylines. Why were fans so desperate for Cassie's drugs to be Laurie's fentanyl?
What that expectation reveals about the audience is incredibly profound. We actively crave narrative causality. We wanted Cassie's cocaine to be Laurie's fentanyl because it would tie a neat, albeit tragic, bow around the entire plot.
It would connect the dots.
It would mean that A leads to B, which leads to C.
It makes the world feel smaller and more manageable.
Precisely. We desire structure. If Laurie is the source of all the drugs, then the tragedy makes sense. It has an author.
But that's not how the show works.
No. The universe of the show is defined by senseless, decentralized chaos. Sometimes a bad decision is just an isolated bad decision.
It doesn't all lead back to one supervillain.
Exactly. Sometimes the tragedy doesn't connect to the overarching villain. It's just a byproduct of a universally broken world. The audience's desire for the fentanyl connection is our psychological attempt to impose order on a narrative that fundamentally refuses to be orderly.
Because the alternative is just too scary.
The idea that everyone is independently destroying themselves without a grand conspiracy is almost too bleak for the audience to handle.
Which begs the question, how do we handle it? How do millions of viewers survive watching an hour of television that features bugged phone interrogations, the horrific realities of human trafficking, inescapable cyclical trauma, and predatory drug empires?
We cope the only way the internet knows how.
We meme it.
The psychological pressure valve of the internet.
Exactly. The show balances its darkest, most suffocating moments with these bizarre, highly memeable, and wildly inappropriate bursts of visual humor.
The tonal shifts are just wild.
The audience latches onto them like life rafts. Let's look at Jules' art project.
Oh, the set piece.
She painted a set piece for a network TV show, and this painting featured an, quote, absolutely excessive amount of male nudity.
So many deaths.
Just an absurd amount. User Advanced Placement TV Riley questioned whether someone should have maybe tapped Jules on the shoulder and told her that network television doesn't usually feature an excessive amount of phalluses.
Probably good enough for a network show, yeah.
Right. But then, in the same breath, the user academically noted that the art style was highly reminiscent of Georges Seurat's pointillism.
That juxtaposition is incredible. You have an audience rigorously analyzing the art historical lineage of a phallic sight gag.
But wait, think about pointillism conceptually. Pointillism is optical blending.
Okay, where are you going with this?
The artist doesn't mix the paint on the canvas, right? They paint tiny, isolated dots of distinct color. The viewer's brain has to do the work to combine those dots into a cohesive image from a distance.
Yes, the eye mixes the colors.
Isn't that a perfect metaphor for exactly what the audience is doing with this show? The writers give us tiny dots, Bishop's look, Faye's robbery, Cassie's coke, and we are desperately trying to blend them into a cohesive picture.
Oh, that is a brilliant observation. The medium is the message. The show forces the viewer to be an active participant in constructing the narrative, just as a pointillist painting forces the eye to construct the image.
It's crazy. And the memes just get even more absurd. There's a mysterious door gag that happens.
The door. I love that.
User Giraffian Shrooms admitted they spent the entire episode thinking the guy trying to force a door open was Elliot.
I thought the same thing for a second.
And user Berto Bellamy summed up the recurring absurd gag with just 4 words. She did it again, followed by a door emoji.
So simple, but so funny.
And then right in the middle of this incredibly tense life or death bathroom scene with Rue and Kitty, Rosalia is just casually whistling.
Such a surreal moment.
User MyKetaStuLoud was frantic in the thread, desperate to know what specific song she was whistling. I have to ask you, while I am laughing at the absurdity of it all, why do we do this?
Why do we obsess over the memes?
Yeah, why do we, as a fandom, immediately pivot to a debate about Surratt's pointillism technique or whistling tune right after a soul-crushing realization about human trafficking?
We do it because of the absolute psychological necessity of comic relief.
We just need a break.
Exactly. The writers understand that the human brain can only sustain a state of high-alert anxiety for a limited time before it either shuts down, numbs out, or rejects the input entirely.
It's just too much cortisol.
If the show operated at a 10 out of 10 on the trauma scale for 60 consecutive minutes, it would be unwatchable. It would become misery porn.
You have to come up for a breath of air before you dive back under the water.
Precisely. The writers deploy these surreal, memeable moments, the excessive painting, the mysterious door gag, the whistling in the bathroom as deliberate pressure valves.
So the absurdity is structural.
It is a masterful use of tonal whiplash. By abruptly dropping an absurd, almost slapstick joke into a grim narrative, it momentarily shatters the tension. It allows the audience's nervous system to exhale.
And then the next scare hits harder.
Counterintuitively, yes.
Yeah.
It makes the next dark moment hit even harder because your emotional defenses have been temporarily lowered.
And the fans on Reddit are participating in that exact same psychological regulation. We turn the monster into a cartoon, into a meme, so we can digest it.
It's a coping mechanism.
Memes are how a collective audience domesticates trauma. We mock the absurdity of the darkness to assert some small measure of control over how the darkness makes us feel.
It is a testament to the density and sophistication of the storytelling that a single episode of television can generate such a wide, intense spectrum of both analytical and emotional responses from its viewership.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today, and I want to pull all these disparate threads together.
Let's do it.
This deep dive has shown us a hyper-pressurized world. We've explored a universe where the institutions meant to protect, like the DEA, are revealed to be as dangerous and inept as the cartels they are fighting.
The inverted rescue.
Exactly. We've analyzed the tragic, horrifying irony of trafficking victims adopting the names of intangible, magical X-Men superheroes as a form of dissociative psychological armor.
Going out to survive.
We've looked at the haunting visual echoes of high school trauma manifesting in literal mini-mes running through the background.
The generational loop.
We've debated whether lost characters like Faye have any true agency in Laurie's calculated web of addiction. And finally, we explored how both the narrative and the audience survive this relentless tension through the pressure valve of absurd, pointillist memes.
Every single element we discussed today revolves around a central axis, the desperate struggle for control in an environment designed to strip it away.
Which brings us to the final thought we want to leave you, the listener, with today. Think about the overarching theme of what we've unpacked.
It all comes down to authorship.
It does. We've seen Rue handed a script by an incompetent DEA handler forced to play a role she didn't write. We've seen victims assigned identities and comic book code names by their exploiters, stripping away their real names.
Right.
We've seen the narrative itself visually trap the younger generation, literally assigning them the roles of mini-me's, doomed to repeat the mistakes of the older generation.
Everyone is having their identity and their actions authored by someone else.
Exactly. So here is the provocative question I want you to mull over as you go about your week, as you think about these characters and maybe even the structures in your own life.
What is it?
If everyone in this universe is having their identity assigned to them by an external force, whether it is the law, a cartel boss, a trafficker, or just the inescapable cyclical weight of history, who in this story is actually writing their own future?
Or any of them.
Are any of these characters truly free to make a choice?
Yeah.
Or are they all just passengers in that speeding car, pressing their foot on mushy brakes, listening to the polka music play as they hurtle toward the inevitable crash?
It is a dark philosophical question, but it is the defining question that will carry us through the rest of this season.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. It is always such a joy to look past the surface level plot, to read between the lines of the fandom, and to uncover the real why behind the drama with all of you.
It's been great.
Until next time, keep your eyes open, question the narrative, and whatever you do, watch out for those bug phones.